In this video, I'm going to show you 3 different ways that you can connect 2 vertical shapes in your weaving. So let's get started. In this first example, we're starting with 2 shapes that aren't connected at all. They're just 2 rectangles next to each other, and you can see we have this big gap in the center, which is not something you're going to want once the piece is off the loom. So for this one, I'm going to flip my loom over. I've already tucked in all the ends from these 2 little shapes, and I'm going to grab a piece of my 4/8 warp string. So I'm just grabbing a small amount of this warp string, and we're actually going to sew these shapes together. So this is the method you're going to want to use for the most clean vertical lines that you can get. When I wove my 2 shapes, I made sure that they were the same length. So there's the same amount of loops of the blue as there is the white. So I'm going to grab the warp string between the first 2 loops on the blue side and on the white side. And then before I continue sewing, I'm going to tie a knot, and then I can continue on. So I'm going to pull down the next loop of both the blue and the white. And now I'm starting on the white side. So pushing down the next 2 loops, grabbing just the warp string on each side, and then going up to the next ones and continuing on. So we're literally just sewing the shapes together and going between those loops so that we have a really clean finish on the other side. So now that we're at the top, I'm going to tie this off. So I'm going to go back to this loop, and I'm going to go through this one as well. And we're going to make sure that that is knotted in place like so. And then we can use this same needle to tuck in this end. So I'm just going to grab a few of these weft loops on the back of the piece. I can pull that through and trim off the excess. Grab the other end, weave that in a few of the weft loops just on the back, and trim off the excess. So now when we flip it over, you can see that we're left with a really clean line. If you look closely, you can see your stitch lines, but it disappears quite nicely and you have this really straight vertical line in your piece. The second way to connect 2 vertical lines in your weaving, or 2 vertical shapes, is to interlock the weft. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. So in this case, you're going to weave from one side. So I'm starting on the left. And then I'm going to weave from the right, and I'm going to take my blue string and wrap it around the off-white, and then weave back the other direction with the blue. So now you can see these 2 yarns are interlocked to each other. Then I'm going to weave back the other direction with the white. Now normally when I'm actually weaving, I would have a twining stitch or something to stabilize this, but for this example, I'm just showing you what you would do in the middle of your weaving. So now we have these 2 connected, and we can do the same thing again. So I'm going in with the blue, back with the white, and I'm gonna wrap the blue around the white and go back the other direction with the blue, and then back the other direction with the white. You can continue that process for the entire length of your vertical shapes. So in this example, if you spread out your warp and don't beat down as firmly, you're going to be left with more of a hinge look. Now, if you squish your weft down a little bit tighter, you can see that you're left with a cleaner line. Once the ends are all tucked in, this is what you're left with. You can see that we still have a pretty clean line, but there is a bit more of a stagger going on in the center. What I love about this third way of connecting 2 vertical shapes, it allows you to weave 1 shape at a time. So we can do 1 complete blue shape, and then we can add the white after. So first I'm going to start by creating just a simple rectangle with the blue. Now that I have my blue rectangle woven, I'm going to start with my white. What's different about this technique is now these shapes are going to be sharing a warp string instead of being attached with the weft. So I'm going to go in with the white. So now I'm going to push down the first loop of the blue, and I'm grabbing just the warp string, and this is where the 2 shapes are going to be sharing that warp string. Now this technique is going to work best if you don't weave your weft too tightly on each side. so that this section doesn't get too overcrowded. So now I can go back with the white, make sure our warp strings are spread evenly, back with the white, and now I'm gonna push down the next loop of the blue and grab again onto just the warp string like so. Back with the white, push down the next loop of the blue and grab onto the warp string and weave back. This third way of connecting the weft with a warp string gives you the most obvious line and a bit of a door hinge shape, but I would say it's the most efficient way of connecting two shapes together. If you enjoyed this video, check out our Stitch Library playlist next.